Welcome to Small Biz Life, episode 83. Want to get more done? Go have fun.
Does this sound familiar?
Oh my God, I have so much to do today.
Don't forget to breathe.
But I have almost 400 emails in my inbox and 30 phone calls to make.
Have you looked into getting a virtual assistant yet?
Oh, and I need to schedule all my social media posts.
Did you drink anything today?
I had coffee.
Did you eat today?
Did I mention coffee's a bean?
This is Small Biz Life.
Hey guys, welcome to another exciting, fun episode of Small Biz Life.
Yay, fun. Okay, that's a fun.
Fun. So, what a great way to start the show. Yay. My name's Kristen Ingram.
And I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And we are a husband and wife team of small business owners. I am a CPA and CEO of Ingram Digital Media.
And I am an IT person. I'm the chief of business systems for Ingram Digital Media.
And, as small business owners, we understand that, life gets hectic, your business gets hectic, and we're all looking for tools in order to be more productive. But I think, as Brendan Burchard says, common sense is not always common practice.
Yeah, because a lot of times, we forget the things that we know on purpose because we're looking for a different type of fix. We think it would be easier if we could just concentrate 100% of our life on the next important goal that we have. And the problem is it's not really how the human brain was designed to work. We're kind of flawed that way. And most of us have these solutions because we've used them at points in our life, but we forget. That's why last episode we talked about sleep. And that's a great example of it. And this episode, we're going to go into something too, where it's another one that we've known our whole life and we purposely ignore because we're trying to cheat the system. And the problem is when the system's your brain and your body, you can't do that. Right.
So, we're going to kind of do some episodes on productivity hacks that are not apps, are not pieces of software. They're not notebooks. Mm-hmm. They're not what people traditionally seek out when they're looking for productivity tools.
I mean, that's one of the great fun things we're having in HQ this month is because, we're focused on these kind of things because if our brain and body aren't willing, you could find the perfect system and it will not work for you.
Exactly.
Or definitely not in the way that you hope it will.
Right. So what I would like to ask you right now is I want you to think about these three things. What do you think they have in common? Segway polo. I love that show. Trapeze and playing the ukulele.
And not any form of trapeze. This is high wire trapeze.
Wow. So what do they have in common? What do you think?
Answers to Jeopardy questions?
Probably. Yes, if you put them in the correct form.
They are probably the hobbies of billionaires.
Yes, absolutely. So these are the hobbies of Steve Wozniak, Sergey Brin, and Warren Buffett.
That's right. Warren Buffett plays the ukulele.
I think that's so awesome.
Well, I actually want to check out his shows. I hope he's in town at a club and we can go check him out at some point.
Yeah, I don't know if he actually plays shows, does he?
So Warren, I'm sure you're listening to the show right now. So could you get something set up around us? That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that'd be very cool.
But, it's one of the interesting things is, and I could have picked from lots of famous people. I specifically picked people who've been transformational. Steve Wozniak is the guy who really was the engineering foundation of Apple. He was, Steve Jobs was the heart of Apple, but Wozniak was the brain. Mm-hmm. Sergey Brin, if you do not know, is one of the Google guys. Not one of the famous ones that is now the CEO, but he really helped get Google going in the beginning. And Warren Buffett, if you do not know, is a billionaire investor who specializes in those everyday things that people need in their life.
Right. And a lot of times, Warren is kind of famous for investing in small businesses and taking them to the next level.
The next 30 levels. Maybe.
The next 30 levels. But, things like See's Candy, and small insurance companies that he's built up.
Yep. He's very famous also for investing in things that he understands.
Right.
It's like he wouldn't invest in Facebook because he doesn't get it.
Right.
But he would invest in a company that makes paint.
Yes.
And guess what we all need? Paint.
Right.
So there's maybe some brains to all three of these people. They're all amazing in their own ways. But one of the things is they have hobbies. And now the question that always left me with is, do they have hobbies now because they can afford them? And maybe Steve Wozniak does because he's semi-retired at least. He's not worked actively with Apple for years. Sergey Brin, maybe. Warren Buffett, though, works about 380 days a year, I believe.
He's currently working on a system to create more time.
That's right. He is trying to create more time because he works all the time. And so it can't be that. So what is it about hobbies that attracts these guys who achieve at a higher level than I really even dream at? I have no dream of being a billionaire, and at least not at this point. That's maybe either too far outside of my scope, or, I don't want to do the sacrifices it takes to get to those kind of levels. Maybe I'm not sure, but it's not within my dream scope. But these people at this really high level, why do they all have? And sometimes like trapeze, that's kind of crazy. But what is the attraction to hobbies?
Well, and I do have to say that one of my dreams is actually to own a share of Berkshire Hathaway A.
Just one.
Because it currently trades at, let's see, I'm looking this up here, $245,000 a share.
Yeah.
So it's always been, and it was funny because this was my dream when it was about $100,000 a share. And
too bad we couldn't afford to buy it at that point.
I know, right? But that's always been kind of like on my bucket list that I wanted.
That's been on your bucket list at least the entire time we've been together.
Yeah.
I believe.
To own one share of Berkshire A.
Yeah. And so when I see things like this, it makes Jeffrey think. So what is it about hobbies? And now I'm a hobbyist. I am a hobbyist. I mean,
oh, yeah.
My whole life are things that people would consider hobbies. Podcasting, fantasy world building. These are things for people who are out there, right? These aren't things that billionaires, but apparently they are things billionaires would also do. So maybe there's something more to it than just a hobby.
So I expect now that since you are a rabid hobbyist, that you're going to make us $1 billion.
Well, I should, with all my hobbies, we should have 10 billion or something like that.
Yeah, I know. We have to afford all those arcane books that you keep buying at used bookstores.
What I found when I started researching, and are there actual measurable benefits to hobbies? And now obviously there's, the generic idea where you can relax. And which is a really tough idea when you're stressed out, is that you need to relax. And I get this because being a former burnout, I was stressed to the nines for, I don't know, 10 years.
And it was funny because during that time that you were really burnt out, you weren't working on your hobbies.
I didn't do any of my hobbies because I was stressed out trying to figure out what to do next instead of doing some of the things I loved.
But it's funny because over the last couple months before you quit your job, right? But you were working on the podcast and you were working on...
That's when I started breaking out of the burnout.
Right. Yeah. And it really helped you to get out of that burnout phase. And if you're, if you're not sure whether or not you're in the burnout phase, check out our last episode where we talked just about burnout and the signs of it. Because
really until you start coming out of it, it's hard to realize you're even there. And I didn't even, probably until I fully got out of it, didn't realize I was even in it. So burnout is a thing that really gets on Jeffrey's goat. So, but the biggest benefit I could see, and so in doing the research, I found the one big benefit of having hobbies is this idea that it reduces eustress. And that is EU stress, one word. And that is the positive aspect of stress, because stress are just sort of changes that happen in life. things that come back and affect you. Some are positive. We call those eustress. Some are negative. We call those distress, or at least that's what scientists call them. I didn't really call them that until I did this research.
That's why research is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, because I think we have this belief that stress is this bad thing. That's really only half of the stress picture that we're looking at. So if you're getting married, that is to me a positive stress, and if you marry and you have a good marriage, it remains that way throughout the time, which I would suggest.
Having a good marriage. Yeah, that is very helpful, I think.
But the biggest benefit in increasing your eustress is it reduces fatigue. And it's not only in morning, but in the work. So just think about this, Warren Buffett at night takes some time and plays the ukulele. And you're like, what a waste of time. He could be making $1 billion, but maybe it helps him make another $1 billion the next day at work. And where he probably works longer hours or gets interrupted more than what I do, because he has a massive company with massive companies inside of his massive company. But because he takes the time to relax the brain, he has more energy to take on the morning and work. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, as I've increased my energy, it also gets past work into the evening where, after I'm done working, sometime around 6 or 7 o'clock at night, I'll have time to do hobbies.
Yeah. And I find, and it's funny because you can have lots of different types of hobbies. One of my hobbies is video games. And I found that if I play for 30 minutes mm-hmm. before I go to bed, I sleep much better mm-hmm. because it distracts my brain. It gets it off of work. If I try to go right to bed, a lot of times I'm still thinking about all of those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
mm-hmm.
it might be a client I talk to. It might be content we need to do. And doing something that distracts my brain away from that and kind of helps me wind down really helps reduce my fatigue.
And I know last week in the real time, so about a week before you hear this episode, I got really focused on just crushing it and getting everything done that week, which was a mistake because I ended up gaining a lot of negative stress and starting to get a little bit of fatigue, but knowing enough to catch it. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the keys is, especially if you're not to that billionaire stage. And even when you're there, there's nothing showing that money itself actually makes you happy. Mm-hmm. Or I'm willing to give it a shot, but,
there's actually
lifestyle choices.
Right. They've actually done studies that say, that once you get past the comfort level where all of your needs are taken mm-hmm. care of, the more money you make, the more stressed out you get.
Because I think the idea there is they think that you're stressed out on how to keep moving forward, or you're stressed out on how to keep what you have, and that actually detracts. I'm willing to prove that one wrong, though.
Okay, that's fine. I'm good with that. So hobbies also help you create connections with people.
This is really important on 2 points.
Oh, yeah, because, this is both direct and indirect. Mm-hmm. So if you're engaging in hobbies, usually you're connecting with other people, right? Mm-hmm. So you're learning how to do this hobby, or maybe there are meetups for your hobby. If it's something that's sports related, you're on a team. Mm-hmm. If you're doing 5Ks, you're doing them with other people. It creates community. And so it helps you meet new people.
Mm-hmm. And like you said, it could be directly where it's in person, or indirectly where you go to a Facebook group and there's a whole bunch of people who talk about things that you love or you find important.
Right. And if you listen to last week's episode, we said that one of the symptoms of the third stage of burnout is isolation.
Yeah.
And so you are less likely to burn out when you are creating community around yourself, and hobbies are a really good way to do that.
And here's a pro tip for you too. For all you people who sit out there and wonder, how do I find my avatar? That's why it's important to have one, so you know what they like, because you can then go and market to Facebook groups where they congregate. Mm-hmm. It's a traffic hack.
Right. And the thing is too, it's if your avatar, runs 5Ks and you are looking for a hobby and you start running 5Ks, you're probably going to meet them there.
And you can network with some in person. You can learn what Facebook groups they're in, join those, become this person that helps people who do 5Ks. Mm-hmm. But the next thing is too, is it helps increase productivity. And that kind of is really residual from the fatigue, right? And this is when I really learned a lot when I started getting past being over fatigued all the time is I get so much more done at an hour now, and I can focus for a whole hour, which I could not focus for a whole hour on almost anything that I did not absolutely love for the entire time I was burned out. And I kind of have maybe some sort of attention issues on top of stuff, but really now, because I'm into trying to get through and achieve certain things during the day, when I don't have fatigue, I can start knocking things off, get wins, and build up momentum in a day. Because not only does that work with your business and growing your business, having momentum in your business, which you always hear about, that helps you get through certain days where you're doing tougher activity. I spent a whole day and a half doing key entry data for a person who I really love. But you know what? I crushed it out, and that probably would have taken me a week to do before because I would have got burned out and distracted and on other things during the day.
Right. And I think part of the reason that it helps increase your productivity is because of the next one. It helps increase your creativity.
Yeah.
And I find that, doing taxes is not the most creative thing in the whole world. And if I don't work on my hobbies and do some creative things, I will totally burn out during tax season.
Yeah. And, the other thing is too, is once again, it's distracting your mind from the problems at hand. Because much like when we talked about sleep a couple episodes ago, and how the neural connections fire off at night and you get those aha moments, sometimes completely distracting your brain from an attention, you might get one even more quickly. And it's not the neural pathways connecting like when you sleep, but it's just because your brain is off of the activity and all of a sudden it's another way aha moments come up.
Right. And, it was interesting because, I was out with a friend having dinner and, we were just talking, chatting, having a good time. And on the drive home, because I wasn't thinking about business, I had one of those like aha moments. And I was like, holy crap, this is a great idea. And I came home and I'm like, look, product, ta-da!
And then we slept on it and had more aha moments about that product the next morning. Win-win.
Yes.
And now, before, it's like we said, it helps promote eustress. And that's sort of shady language for there's not, there's a correlation, but necessarily a causation. But there's definitely much more of a direct link in understanding that the distress, the bad kind of stress, does go down, which once again helps reduce your fatigue, helps increase your productivity. So a lot of these things are interconnected with just removing the stress. So it's not just hobbies that actively work and exercise your brain. It's not just hobbies that actively work and help your body. It's letting the mind relax sometimes.
Right.
And, that's key to having a healthy mind and a healthy life.
When you are in a constant state of stress, your brain never gets to relax. It never gets to let in new ideas, let go of old ideas. It doesn't get the rest that it needs. If you do not take time to relax and de-stress, you are going to burn out. And you are never going to get as much done as you could if you slept for 8 hours and practiced the hobby.
Yeah. And because really, too, part of it is probably a defense mechanism of your brain. Your brain will do a lot of things to protect itself. And if it needs to burn you out and make you think you feel fatigued so you slow down, it will. Don't underestimate your mind and don't think it's always on what you think is your side. And in a way it is, but sometimes we trick ourselves, our system 2 cognition will have flawed logic that is outputting bad ideas. Like if I just worked another 10 hours this week, another 20 hours this week. Well, gee, I have 169 hours. If I could just work for 160 of them, all of my money problems would be gone.
You have 168 hours.
I'm special.
Okay. Yes, we know that. You're very special. If your hobby includes moving, that benefits your body as well. So if you're doing something that's sports related, if you're walking, if you're exercising, anything you can do to get moving is going to benefit your body and your brain.
Yeah. Yeah, too, because especially with memory, once again, the two ways we remember long-term is when we let stuff out of the active memory. So think about your computer. You have the active memory of this stuff when it's open at the time, and sometimes that gets overwhelmed and it bogs down and it starts telling you, I'm losing things and your battery's draining faster. You're kind of like your phone, but the nice thing is with the way the brain works is when you take something out of active memory, it starts the process of turning into long-term memory.
Right.
And which really happens overnight, but you need to let it go.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about some examples of hobbies. And I think some of these people wouldn't necessarily think of as hobbies.
Yes. Some you wouldn't consider hobbies. Other ones you probably would. Let's start off with one that I think is very important for all people.
As a writer.
Especially this summer, reading. And I'm not just talking about nonfiction that will make you better at your work. I'm talking about fiction. I'm talking about things that are nonfiction that aren't related to work. It can't all be about being better at one thing. Our bodies aren't designed to do one thing. We hunt, we gather, we live in societies. Our bodies and brains aren't designed to be hyper-focused.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Musical instruments. This is something I've always wanted to do. This is on my bucket list. I want to learn to play a musical instrument.
That's a perfectly good hobby, and it'll strengthen your math skills.
Especially, if you learn, when you're learning to read music, it has the same effect as learning a language.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And a lot of great mathematicians there's a connection between math and music. Mm-hmm. And not just naturalistically, like rhythms are, certain types of ratios, which I don't know because I'm not a musician, but I do know that they exist. That's where rhythm comes from. If you match those ratios, people hear it and they go, oh, that's a good rhythm. Mm-hmm. But that's really something that exists in nature in us that can be exploited through a musical instrument. But it's like, I know like Alan Greenspan started off as a jazz musician and then he became like in charge of the Federal Reserve. So if you want to improve your math skills but don't like doing math, play guitar or ukulele.
There you go.
Exercise can be, and once again, it might not be for you. You might do it, but might not consider it a hobby. Like I do exercise, but I do not consider it a hobby. I consider it a thing I need to do to have the energy and the health physically to be able to do all of the things I want to do. So I see a benefit to it, but not quite to the level of a hobby.
Okay.
But lots of people do.
Mm-hmm.
Learning languages. Great one, learn that Spanish, learn Japanese, Chinese, whichever one you want.
You could learn Badracham.
You can learn Badracham. You get bonus points for that. And then unlike Kristen says, you can actually pronounce everything in Badracham.
And if you learn to write a language.
I think that's a double bonus.
Right, because that triggers different areas of your brain when you write something than when you learn to speak something.
Yeah.
And so you're working different parts of your brain. So I really like the next one, gaming. Mm-hmm. Whether it's, you're playing cards, you're playing games, you're putting puzzles together. Mm-hmm. Not only does that help relieve your stress and it's fun, but it also, depending on the type of game that you do, it makes your brain work in different ways that you don't normally do.
Yeah.
So, there are a couple games we play. Well, we just got a new set of Uno cards because we burned through 2 decks because we played them so much. But, if you think about that, you're trying to put together strategy, right? So how can I go out before this person goes out? So I don't think a lot of people think of it as a strategy game, but it really is.
Yeah. Most board games, and card games are strategy games. And so, the thing people don't, it's like, even like your real base ones that some people don't like your first person shooters, really what you're doing in the game is you're learning a very complex system that you don't see all the parts of and figuring out how to exploit it. That's why video games a lot of times, if done in moderation, it can actually be beneficial to people. They make good hobbies.
Right. And what were scientists trying to figure out? And they created a video game?
It was, I believe they were trying to model a medicine to treat AIDS. Mm-hmm. And so what they did was the scientists couldn't figure out, there were like and I'm probably misremembering this, but this is the idea. They were trying to model together different types of, I'll say genes, but I don't know if they were genes. Let's say molecules. They're trying to get them to stick together because they thought that that could help in the process of AIDS and
fighting AIDS.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, not inspired, but they couldn't figure out how to do it. So I believe out of the University of Washington, what they did was they created a video game. And the idea was there were certain types of rules, and it was the rules that scientifically you needed to get it done, to be able to put the pieces together, which the scientists for years couldn't figure out, but they made it a game. And they were even open on, this is what this is for. Play this game, and people would get points and levels, and they were rewarded as in a game, playing a game. And some woman in the UK figured out how to make the medicine.
Right.
She's not academic. She's not a scientist. She's a gamer.
Right. And they've done a lot of research on, people who play video games. Generally, they have better hand-eye coordination. Their brains process information more quickly. Because if you've ever played a video game, the things are kind of coming at you, right? Yeah. And you've got to be able to process them. And it also helps with strategic thinking.
Well, I know the funny one was when I joined the service back in the late 80s, early 90s, due to manpower shortages, I was made a gunner about 6 months into my time in the service. And that's a gunner on a big armored vehicle is typically considered a sergeant's job. So you've been in for several years when you get this kind of job. But just due to necessity, they're like, you two go together. You're going to fail, but whatever. And I shot a perfect score. And then all of a sudden, my platoon sergeant, my platoon leader, my captain are all watching me, trying to figure out what made it work for this guy. And then it was funny because as I was getting ready to leave that duty station, they actually came to me and they were asking me, who are some other guys who are good at playing video games? Because in their mind, they connected together that they saw me loving and playing video games. And they thought that was the thing that maybe made me good at shooting a real life gun. And trust me, it's not the same thing. So just because I can shoot a gun in a video game does not mean I can shoot one in real life. But there is an eye-hand coordination. It's processing the stimulus in quickly. And which is part of it because to shoot a perfect score is not only hitting the targets, but there's time and a number of bullets you're allowed to use in the type of vehicle I was in to be able to do that. And so gaming really does help with that kind of stuff. And it's not even just video games, it's board games, it's card games. These all really exercise your mind, much like reading fiction. These complex stories that interest us, we're trying to figure out who done it or what's going to happen next in the narrative. Those really exercise the mind more than we give them credit for because you're trying to figure it out.
Right. And you're using different parts of your brain than you normally use in your day-to-day activities. Mm-hmm. So, and the last one, yoga.
Yeah, no, I like yoga. Yoga's fun. I started doing yoga because I have some chronic back pain issues and knee pain issues. And for a long period of time, and as I was coming out of it, I kept having muscular issues and my back would keep going out. So one of the things I started doing was yoga to help with the back pain. And it worked. And not perfect, but the thing is, it allowed me to start exercising and stretching those muscles out again, which I couldn't really do for years because of the chronic pain. And it helped me get out of that part of my life where I have to be careful. If I move funny, my knee will hurt in an instant. But the thing is, I now know enough, of what I need to do to make my knee get better, and then how to stretch my body to help exercise a little bit more. And the stronger the muscles are, the less likely my knee slips.
Right. So now I want to put a caveat into this. If you have taken your hobby and turned it into a business, you need to find another hobby. Mm-hmm. Because if you are a crafter and you've turned that craft into a business, whenever you are engaging in that activity now, you are thinking about the business side of things. Mm-hmm. How quickly can I do this? How much money can I make off of this? How many of these do I need to make? And you start putting business pressures on yourself when you are doing your hobby.
Or like, I'm a fantasy world builder and author, and part of my job there is creating these settings that aren't real. And so I have to be careful. I have to have really defined boundaries that certain types of world building activities are really propelled to create narratives. And so those happen as a job. But now I'm a little insane and I kind of go over the top in spots. So for me, that's hobbyist stuff because you know what? A lot of people might not ever even hear about or know about some of the things that exist in my world because it's just, it's extra detail I fleshed out because I find, putting together fictional cultures and creating things that don't exist to be fun. But I don't do that as part of the job because that actually slows down the production. And I probably would never get a novel written because I'd spend all my time building the world. So I have to split out parts of it to say this part I like to do, but isn't really helpful towards the business side, and have a defined boundary between them, and really like it's in a transition in your mind between activities. And I wouldn't go from world building for work into world building for a hobby because that would be impossible. But when I start the activity, I intentionally really go, okay, why am I world building right now?
Right, and I think. I've had crafters come to me and say, well, this is not a project for my business. This is a personal project. But the problem is what happens in your brain is your brain's, you start to think, well, maybe this could be a project I could sell. Maybe this could be a project I could turn into a class. And then your brain starts going down that route and you're no longer thinking relaxation, you're thinking business again.
And my thing is, if you love crafting, and you have certain forms that you do for business, maybe the boundary is you do certain other types of crafting for fun.
Right.
So maybe if you knit sweaters to sell to people, you then do
scrapbooking, sewy stuff.
I'm an expert on all things crafting.
Yeah, I can tell. Okay, so what happens when your hobbies and your life collide?
Yeah. And I think this is one, and it also kind of goes in, it can actually collide to a point where it hurts your relationships. You hear about those people. I mean, we even heard about one Asian kid, I believe from Japan or Korea, who died playing a video game. Or maybe it interferes with work because you're up till 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, not at night. But you're staying up way too late engaging in hobby, and it's taken away from your relationships or your work. But hobbies can be taken to a degree, like most things, where they interfere with your life. And this is really where like time management becomes important, and also dream. That's one of the reasons we believe people should live towards a dream, because living towards a dream allows you to be able to go, you know what, this is great. I'm having a blast, but you know what? I can't wait to build a freaking sales funnel tomorrow. So I need to get some sleep because that will also help me get closer to my dreams. It's not just momentary gratification, which is important to live presently, but you have to have some vision to where you're moving. And that's where dreams, become important for us. And so I would suggest if it's something you struggle with, go to smallbizlife.com/dreambig. And it's only for the rest of this month are we giving away for free. After that, it will no longer be given away for free.
The Dreamcatcher assessment.
The Dreamcatcher assessment. But it will help you not only with the dream side of things, but being able to create priorities and start living in every area of your life a little closer to those dreams.
Right. But, in the meantime, budget time for your hobbies. So, when I'm done with everything I need to do for the day, we've had dinner, we've cleaned up from dinner, I'll kind of look at the clock and go, hey, I've got, an hour before I need to go to bed. Everything I need to get done is done. So I'm going to play for an hour. And, I watch the clock to make sure that I don't play too late, because I need to get my sleep in.
And like we said before, if you have trouble with that, you can always set an alarm to go to sleep.
Oh yeah, I've got all sorts of alarms that are buzzing throughout the day. My words are an alarm, when it's time for me to stop working, when it's time for dinner, when it's time for lunch, when it's time to go to bed. But it's funny because people are like, your phone is constantly buzzing at you, but it helps me stay on track and it helps me maintain my routine.
Because each time you can stay into your routine, it helps you become more disciplined at getting towards your dreams. And the more disciplined you become in your life, the more likely you are to achieve them.
Right. And, I think what happens a lot of times is we overindulge in something, right? Whether it's, a hobby, food, something. And then we go, oh, we've got to correct this. And we cut back too far, right? And then we get stressed the other way, right? Where, oh my God, I have no enjoyment in my life. I'm eating kale all the time. And you keep going through these cycles where you overindulge and then you underindulge and you overindulge and you underindulge. And you're just kind of miserable all the time.
Yeah. I remember, and I'm just thinking about it now, which is unfortunate, but there was a study done years ago about how effective non-sugar sweeteners are. And one of the things that they found was even though they taste sweet and you go yum, 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 the reason your body starts craving sweetness is because it's looking for sugar. And when sugar is introduced to the body, it will attach to certain receptacles inside of your body, and your body will say, I no longer need sugar. But sweeteners were actually, and sometimes can be counterproductive because even though they taste sweet going in and you get a momentary their molecules will not be absorbed by those receptors in your body, and your body will keep going, I want chocolate. Chocolate, chocolate, chocolate.
That's that System 1 voice.
That's the System 1 will start yelling at you. And so sometimes, it's like some people do really well with, I will have one piece of like a Hershey Kiss, and they can go for a long time without having the craving again. And I know some people have other issues and it probably won't work for everyone, but the thing is, these are things to keep in mind because there are real world evidence that when you don't indulge, you get to a point where your body and brain will rebel on you. And they will make you do things like, I just ate 42 pounds of chocolate.
Right. Or even, we will trigger your immune system to lessen so that you get sick, so you'll get some sleep. Your body will do things to protect itself.
Whether or not you want it to.
Right, whether or not you want it to. So when you give your body what it needs, things like rest, things like fun, things like chocolate every now and again.
Socialization.
Right, socialization. Your body will run more smoothly. Your brain will run more smoothly. So, think about how your family would react, your teamwork, your team or your coworkers, your friends that you can make from this.
Yeah. I mean, when was the last time you made a new friend?
When's the last time you had a game night with your family?
I do suggest Uno. It's fun.
There's some great family games out there. A lot of companies are making some awesome strategy games that are really easy to play, so you can play them with your kids. Have a game night. Go out for a bike ride. Go to the park and play soccer. Go do something that's fun.
And different. So now really some of the key takeaways is, when you do engage in hobbies, it will help lower the eustress it'll promote the increase of eustress and decrease the distress, which will lead to the increase in productivity, creativity, and health in your body.
And it can help you become more social.
Yeah. Find a friend again.
Right. So in the show notes, we're going to put a link to some famous people and their hobbies. We're going to put a study about the benefit of eustress and some things about hobbies that will make you smarter, list of hobbies, different ideas, just to kind of help you if you're not sure.
Because trust me, if you have a like for something, there's a hobby for it.
Oh, yeah. Yep, you just got to go out there.
There's a hobby for you if you've never found one. But one thing to keep in mind, too, is some hobbies might smack the ego around. If you play games and you're really competitive, you're going to sometimes lose. And some games are even worse, like chess. Like Kristen decided when she was going through cancer treatment that I was going to teach her how to play chess. And after getting whipped about 3 or 4 or 5 times in a row, she decided that we weren't going to play it and she couldn't understand. I was trying to explain that chess is one of those things that when you play with someone better than you, you get better at, and then you'll get up to their level because they're not getting any better because they're playing at someone who's worse than them. It's just it's the way that hobby works. But she was not willing to put in the losses to get to the point where she was good at it, which is fine. It just was not the hobby for her.
Well, and I will contribute a lot of that to brain fog from chemo. But it was just one of those things like, it's just not fun for me.
No. And, and if it's not fun for you, it's not the hobby for you.
Right.
So to be honest with you, just because lots of other people like it, if you don't like it, it ain't your hobby.
That's right.
We listed just a few that we think are important, but you know what? They jumped out at us doing this show notes because they were things that we could see points to. But, the list of hobbies, from Wikipedia that I put there is humongous. So you will find a hobby, but also remember, some hobbies that people do are actually dangerous. And if one of the ones that you choose to try is actually dangerous, make sure to check with your insurance providers to ensure that you don't lose coverage for starting the wrong hobby.
Right. And also to make sure that you check with your doctor before you do anything that's physical or dangerous.
Yeah.
But we hope that you will find a hobby that works for you. If you have a hobby that you absolutely love, post it in the Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/smallbizlife.
Yeah. And who knows, you might see someone else that you have no idea you should be friends because you have the same interest.
Exactly. So thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
This was Small Biz Life.